They will convince you that sacrifice is admirable, that bending yourself out of shape for others is the highest form of virtue. They prefer you exhausted, drained, worn thin, because the person who always puts everyone else first becomes predictable, pliable, easy to guilt, easy to use. They don't praise your kindness, they depend on it for their convenience. And the most dangerous part, you allow it. You wrap it in words like love and loyalty, but deep down, doesn't it feel less like devotion and more like slow erosion? How many times have you swallowed your own needs just to keep the peace? How often have you burned yourself out for people who wouldn't even strike a match for you? This isn't compassion, it's self-abandonment wearing a noble mask, and it breaks you from the inside out. Stoicism teaches that the highest good is living in harmony with nature, and nature does not reward what weakens its core. Self-neglect isn't virtuous, it's a fracture, and no structure stands when its foundation is collapsing. In this video we peel back the guilt, the conditioning, the lies you were taught, and we rebuild from the ground up. If you're ready to reclaim your life, not through anger but through clarity, then subscribe, not for the channel, but as a quiet commitment to yourself, a step towards sovereignty, toward stillness, toward the strength you were never meant to hand over. Everything in existence, a galaxy, a home, a mind, revolves around a center. And when that center becomes unstable, everything orbiting it begins to fall apart. You don't have to look far to witness it. Think of the person who gives endlessly, says yes to every demand, absorbs every crisis like it's their duty. Look closer and you'll see what they rarely confess: resentment, exhaustion, and the silent collapse of someone who no longer recognizes who they've become. The truth is, most people don't break from one massive blow, they crumble from years of forgetting themselves. Stoicism reminds us that clarity of mind and strength of soul aren't luxuries, they're responsibilities. If you're not centered, you're reactive, and if you're reactive, you're not living, you're being pushed. When the world shakes, if you aren't anchored in your principles, your emotions, your self-worth, then every storm, every expectation, every opinion will drag you somewhere you never chose to go. You are the center of your reality, not out of ego, but out of structure. If your mind is scattered, your relationships suffer. If your energy is stretched across 10 different directions, your vision blurs. You cannot build anything meaningful while constantly trying to rebuild yourself. Yet that's exactly what so many people are doing. They live in fragments, brief moments of peace interrupted by guilt, flashes of focus drowned in distraction, attempts at self-care hijacked by the next emergency. That isn't life, it's survival on repeat. A person who doesn't hold their own center isn't just weak, they're vulnerable to being shaped by the chaos around them. You begin living on other people's timelines, meeting other people's expectations, solving other people's problems. And all the while your inner compass grows quieter, your values fade, your boundaries dissolve. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That wasn't meant as a motivational slogan. It was a warning. It's a principle. Whatever you allow at your inner center will ultimately shape the entire orbit of your life. Holding that center means far more than simply setting boundaries or sticking to a morning routine. It's a vow, a quiet oath to never betray yourself just to be accepted. It's understanding that your peace is your responsibility, not a reward handed out by external circumstances. You cannot wait for the world to calm down before you center yourself, because it never will. There will always be another demand, another crisis, another excuse to abandon yourself one more time. And eventually you come to see that putting yourself last doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you unstable. And instability, no matter how well intended, is dangerous. You can't offer anything meaningful from a fractured foundation. You can't guide others when you're wandering through your own fog. And you certainly can't love well if you keep disappearing in the process. There is a difference between helping and being consumed, between supporting and surrendering, between patience and self-erasure. The center must hold, because if you don't protect it, no one else will. Life doesn't reward overextension. It doesn't give you trophies for exhaustion. What it gives are consequences, fatigue that hardens into bitterness, over-accommodation that turns you invisible, emotional labor that slowly transforms into resentment. And once those seeds take root, it's only a matter of time before they bloom into a quiet anger at others, but mostly at yourself. The person you face in the mirror every morning deserves better than that. They deserve protection, not from the world, but from the version of you that keeps sacrificing them for approval. Centering yourself isn't shutting out life, it's refusing to let life contort you. It's choosing clarity when confusion would be easier. It's choosing self-governance when chasing validation would feel quicker. It's the internal discipline of saying, I will not abandon myself today, regardless of what happens. That is strength. That is stillness. That is sovereignty. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you become that person if your center is constantly shifting to accommodate everyone else? You can't. Not fully and not for long. The world doesn't need more people running on empty. It doesn't need more martyrs, burning themselves down to keep others warm. It needs individuals who are deeply anchored within, people who respond instead of react, people who choose principle over impulse, people who can stand in the storm without being swept away by every opinion, every crisis, every need. You do not owe the world your collapse. You owe it your clarity. You do not owe people constant availability. You owe them a grounded presence, and you can't offer either if you're constantly abandoning your own center in the name of being good, liked, or needed. It's easy to think that putting yourself first is selfish, that prioritizing your own peace betrays the people you care about. But the truth is the opposite. When your mind is clear, your love becomes stronger. When your values are intact, your actions become more intentional. When you move from stillness rather than scattered desperation, everything you give becomes sharper, deeper, more meaningful. That's what the Stoics meant when they spoke about living in accordance with nature, your structure, your place. And nature does not thrive in disorder. Nature thrives through order, through rhythm, through deliberate design. And you are not separate from that structure. You are part of it. So ask yourself, honestly, what is revolving around your center right now? Is it shaped by guilt, fear, and chaos? Or is it grounded in principle, discipline, and clarity? Because whatever occupies your center, whether chosen consciously or allowed unconsciously, will ultimately carve out the shape of your entire life. And the more you neglect that center, the harder it becomes to recognize who you truly are beneath all the noise. Yet that can change, not through a dramatic overhaul, but through a steady return, a daily promise. I come back to myself. I stay. I do not bend for approval. I do not break for acceptance. I hold. Seneca warned, if you do not know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable. Think about that. If your center is unstable, even opportunities become distractions, even support becomes dependency, even love becomes constraint. Without direction, everything becomes noise. With a stable center, even chaos becomes something you can navigate. You respond instead of folding, you move with intention instead of anxiety, you create from order instead of reacting from scarcity. This isn't about being emotionless or detached. It's about sovereignty. It's about being self-governed, disciplined, not out of denial but out of direction. A centered person becomes a force, calm not because life is silent, but because they are focused, unshaken not because there's nothing trying to pull them away, but because they've decided what truly matters. That isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. You weren't meant to scatter your soul across endless emergencies. You were meant to be steady, grounded, the still point in a spinning world, the one who remembers what matters when everyone else forgets. And that begins not with action but with anchoring. The center must hold. Let that be your beginning today and every day, because everything else, your relationships, your work, your legacy, depends on it. Disappearance rarely arrives loudly. It's subtle, quiet, easily overlooked. It starts with tiny moments, the nod you gave when every part of you wanted to say no, the yes that slipped out when your chest tightened in protest, the silence you offered just to avoid unsettling someone else. And you convince yourself it's nothing, just once, just this time, just to keep the peace. But these small fractures in your will, these soft betrayals of your own voice, they don't vanish. They accumulate. You chip away at yourself one quiet concession at a time, until eventually you realize the life you're living feels strange, like a role written by someone else. You're breathing but not fully present. This is the slow disappearance, erosion that doesn't erupt as a crisis but settles in as numbness. You wake up and move through routines instead of choices. You hear everyone else's needs but forget how to articulate your own. You go where you're expected but can't recall the last time you went where you actually desired to be. That's how self-neglect works. It doesn't steal your life all at once. It asks you to hand it over piece by piece, and no one around you sounds the alarm. Because to them you seem functional. You smile, you contribute, you meet expectations. But they aren't the ones who feel what's missing. You are. And you feel it not in panic but in a quiet, heavy ache that grows the longer you ignore it. Most people don't vanish because the world erases them. They vanish because they step out of their own frame. They let other voices drown out their own. They mistake sacrifice for love, compliance for virtue, people-pleasing for peace. But what you bury does not disappear. It waits. And the longer you wait to return to yourself, the harder it becomes to recover what you abandoned. The truth is, no one needs your disappearance to love you. And if they do, it was never love. It was convenience. Stoic philosophy reminds us that our actions must align with our nature, not erode it. Reason and virtue demand alignment, but that alignment becomes impossible when you treat your own needs as disposable. What is rational about betraying your integrity just to maintain temporary peace? What is virtuous about disappearing from the very story that is supposed to be yours? There's a strange kind of grief that comes from missing yourself while still being alive, but that's exactly what happens when you no longer feel anchored in your choices, when every decision bends under the weight of external expectations instead of internal clarity. You may still be doing things, working, helping, solving, but it feels different. It's not creation, it's containment. It's not contribution, it's compensation. You feel the heaviness of everyone else's expectations pressing against a self that hasn't had room to breathe in months, maybe years, and eventually that self goes quiet, not because it lacks strength, but because you stopped listening. Carl Jung once said the most frightening thing is to accept oneself fully, not because the self is so dark, but because it requires your complete presence. And presence doesn't allow for constant escape. To truly accept yourself, you must first acknowledge how far you've drifted and how many times you whispered, "I'll return to myself later," only for later to never come. It is always easier to give than to reflect, easier to serve others than to face the discomfort of unfulfilled desires and dreams you never explored. But avoidance is not peace. Offering your life away without giving yourself a place within it is not love. It's exile. You weren't meant to fade into the background, to live behind the curtain while others stand center stage in your time, your choices, your energy. You reclaim yourself not by shouting to be noticed, but by paying attention, noticing when you shrink instead of stand, when you dilute your truth for someone else's comfort, when your presence feels performed rather than authentic. These moments are not failures, they're signals. Signals urging you to come back. There's a profound strength in choosing yourself again, not loudly, not with defensiveness, but with clarity. It's a gradual return to honesty, to boundaries, to speaking even when your voice trembles, to choosing your rhythm even when the world demands speed, to honoring the small things, rest, solitude, reflection, simply because you finally remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you give, but by how wholly you exist. Epictetus advised, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. But how can you adorn a self you haven't truly met in months? How can you stand tall within a structure you've allowed others to redesign? This isn't about pushing people away, it's about returning to the one person you're with for every second of your life, yourself. That relationship between you and your mind, your body, your breath is sacred and often the most neglected. You show up for deadlines, celebrations, obligations, yet how often do you show up for your own discomfort without muting it? How often do you ask yourself what you truly need and wait long enough to hear the real answer, without guilt, without distraction, without the urge to perform or please? You don't need a reinvention to return to yourself. You need one choice at a time, one boundary reclaimed, 1 hour protected, one truth spoken. This is how the reappearance begins, how the self returns from exile, not with noise or drama, but with alignment. Slowly, the fog lifts. Your breath feels like yours. Again, your decisions gain intention. You start to recognize the unfiltered sound of your own thinking, not shaped by what others want, but by what is true for you. That's when you realize you never vanished. You were simply buried beneath the noise. Seneca wrote, "No person hands out their money to strangers, yet so many of us hand out our lives. You owe it to yourself to stop giving away your hours, your energy, your essence like spare coins. Your life is not loose currency for anyone's agenda. It is sacred ground, and it deserves your presence, not only in the dramatic turning points, but in the quiet, everyday moments. How you spend an afternoon, how you speak to yourself before sleep, how you carry your inner world through the ordinary spaces where no applause exists. You're not weak because you drifted. You're human. It happens. What matters now isn't guilt, it's clarity, not regret, but return. In a world that rewards distraction, the most courageous act is to come home to yourself, to stop seeking permission outside and start listening to direction inside. The voice within you may be faint, but it's still there, and every time you honor it, it grows louder, not in noise but in presence. So take this as a quiet reminder, you're still here. You haven't been erased, you've just been away, and the path back to yourself is always open. And it begins with the simplest yet most radical act imaginable, choosing not to vanish anymore, choosing to remain, choosing to exist, choosing to matter to yourself once again. At first the world may not notice, and yet you will. Over time others will feel it too, not because you demand recognition, but because your presence becomes undeniable. This is how reappearance starts. This is how it endures. Strength doesn't suddenly appear one morning and decide to stay. It isn't inherited, nor is it granted by luck. It is cultivated, deliberately, steadily, continuously. The mistake most people make is believing that once they achieve a certain level of mental clarity, emotional resilience, or physical well-being, they can relax, that somehow the labor is complete. But strength is not a destination. It is a discipline. It is a muscle. If you neglect it, fail to exercise it, or refuse to honor it, it doesn't remain. It fades, quietly, subtly, a little less focus here, a little less intention there. Until one day, the clarity you once possessed feels distant. The stability you relied upon begins to tremble. There is a hidden cost to ignoring what keeps you grounded. If you do not uphold your internal framework, life will still move forward, unrelenting, while you begin to drift. The pressures, the stress, the noise, they continue regardless of your state. Without anchoring yourself, you start slipping. Overwhelmed more easily, distracted more quickly, controlled more readily. This is the truth. Few admit, if you do not preserve your strength, someone or something else will shape your vulnerability. And the more you outsource your stability, the more fragile your existence becomes. At first it may be imperceptible. You may convince yourself that everything is fine, But beneath the surface, your foundation weakens, and it only takes a single storm to reveal how hollow your shelter has become. Discipline, that quiet, relentless practice, is what builds the structure. It is what fortifies the center. It is what allows you to stand unshaken while the world tests your roots. It's the invisible architecture that underpins everything you live in. When you eat well, train your body, guard your time, and think deeply, you're not just practicing self-care. You're protecting your capacity. You're keeping the engine alive. Life will make demands of you, whether you're ready or not. And if you don't have a solid foundation to meet those demands, you'll collapse under pressures that should have been manageable. Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly. Strength is not something you only call upon when things fall apart. It's what you build so that they never do." The Stoics emphasized preparation because they understood adversity isn't a possibility, it's a certainty. When it comes, you won't have time to craft your armor. You either show up ready or you don't. Those who appear unshakable in crisis didn't stumble into luck. They practiced. They practiced discipline on the days they didn't feel like it, reflection when distraction was more tempting, silence in a world that profits off noise. Strength isn't born in applause, it's forged in solitude, in the unseen hours, in the habits no one praises. That is where you discover who you're becoming. That is what determines how well you'll hold when the pressure arrives. Many confuse strength with intensity, thinking that a few fired-up weeks or months will carry them through life. But strength is not built on emotion. It is forged through repetition, by showing up, not with grand gestures, but through ordinary, unglamorous consistency. Your health doesn't maintain itself because you exercised once. Your focus doesn't remain sharp because you meditated last week. Your emotional control doesn't persist because you journaled during a difficult moment. These are practices, not events. If you don't keep them alive in your routine, they fade from your reality. Wanting strength is easy. Committing to the systems that build it is far harder. Building strength means saying no when it's inconvenient, choosing solitude when noise surrounds you, resisting comfort when it calls your name, walking into your morning with intention, not chaos. Every small act, what you eat, how you speak to yourself, how you respond to conflict, shapes the version of you that will face tomorrow. The future isn't something that arrives, it's something you build, one choice at a time. The structure you inhabit 5 years from now will be forged from what you do today, especially when no one is watching. Carl Jung wrote, "What you do not make conscious will rule you, and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. If you don't consciously maintain your internal order, chaos will masquerade as coincidence. You'll look at your life and call it bad luck or bad timing, when in truth you simply neglected your foundation when you had the chance. Strength isn't about control, it's about consciousness, knowing your edges and reinforcing them instead of ignoring them. That kind of strength cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed. When you take yourself seriously, everything changes. You begin to see that your time isn't disposable. Your energy isn't renewable without care, and your attention isn't something to hand out freely. When you treat these things as sacred, the world begins to adjust, not always but gently, but it adjusts. People recognize your limits, your presence grows grounded, your voice becomes steady. This is the outcome of maintenance. ITR isn't rigidity, it's reliability. You become someone others can trust, not because you are always agreeable, but because you are consistent, clear, solid. Seneca reminded us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And most of that waste isn't lost to distraction, it's lost to repair, constantly fixing what we allowed to fall apart, always trying to catch up because we didn't stay ready. Maintenance may feel tedious, but crisis is far more demanding. Choose where to invest your effort wisely. You will either put in the work to preserve your strength or pay the price for abandoning it. One path is uncomfortable by design. The other is painful by consequence. And the remarkable truth is how much stability you can create through just a few daily non-negotiables: a walk, a pause before speaking, 10 minutes of quiet reflection. A deliberate pause before reacting is not weakness, it is command. The person who weaves discipline into their daily life doesn't need to announce their strength. It is evident in their movements, in their choices, in the way they hold their ground. While others rush to appease, this strength is built, not to dominate, but to remain unmoved. When the world shifts around you, you don't have to do everything, but you must do what sustains you. If you neglect your foundation, don't be shocked when everything begins to crumble. You cannot be surprised by fatigue if you ignore rest. You cannot be surprised by anxiety when your mind is cluttered with noise. You cannot be surprised by weakness if you haven't trained your will. Life returns what you invest, not always immediately, but inevitably. When the structure feels heavy and the effort seems invisible, remember why you began. You didn't commit to discipline because it was easy. You committed because you wanted freedom. Freedom from chaos, freedom from weakness, freedom from being tossed by every demand, every emotion, every setback. You maintain strength so that in the moments that matter, you don't collapse. You do the work now so you don't have to rebuild later. Plato said, "The first and best victory is to conquer the self." That victory isn't a single achievement. It is renewed each morning when you choose structure over entropy, peace over indulgence, purpose over drift. Don't wait for collapse to remind you what should have been protected. Guard your mind, move your body, feed your clarity, respect your rhythm. These aren't trends, they are tools. Used consistently, they do more than build strength. They construct a life that holds no matter what comes. Strength demands maintenance, and maintenance is love disguised as discipline. You either care enough to preserve yourself, or you surrender to slow erosion. If you're listening to this, you already know which path you were meant to walk. Choose it today, and every day after. It's rarely the dramatic moments that drain you. It's the tiny leaks, the repeated explanations you offered unnecessarily, the forced yes when your chest screamed no, the reflexive apologies you gave even though you did nothing wrong. These aren't just habits, they are energy drains. Every compromise in your emotional boundaries doesn't just take a piece of peace, it chips away at your presence. Over time it accumulates, leaving you burdened with everyone else's weight while forgetting how to stand tall in your own. You may not see it happening. You may think you're simply being kind, accommodating, cooperative. Yet beneath that smile is quiet, constant fatigue. Not the kind sleep can fix, but the kind that comes from giving too much of yourself without returning home to refill. You feel stretched thin, unnoticed, resentful. That resentment grows where your boundaries used to be. That's the cost of emotional leakage. It doesn't only weaken your mood, it erodes your clarity. And when clarity fades, confusion takes over and begins making decisions for you. Stoic philosophy has always emphasized guarding your inner world as the foundation of peace. Once someone gains control over your emotions, they control you, not with force, but with guilt, manipulation, expectation. You begin shaping your behavior around others' reactions. You tiptoe, you edit your truth, you seek approval, and you don't even realize how much you're being pulled until you find yourself rehearsing conversations mentally, walking on eggshells, shrinking your expression just to keep things smooth. Smooth for whom? And at what cost? Emotional energy is a currency, and most people overspend. You give it away in arguments you should have passed, in situations you should have left, in silences you should have broken. Not all emotional expression is harmful, but unguarded, constant expression without discernment is exhaustion, masquerading as connection, and that is what wears you down. You don't need to voice every reaction. You don't need to validate every feeling someone projects onto you. Sometimes the most powerful act is to remain calm, not by suppressing, but by choosing not to bleed for what doesn't deserve a wound. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves, But that understanding can only happen when you stop giving away your emotional power. When you pause before reacting, when you let space enter between stimulus and response, that is where clarity lives. That is where you remember that not you are. Every comment demands a defense. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every frown is your responsibility to fix. You reclaim emotional sovereignty not by shutting down, but by filtering where your energy actually belongs. There is dignity in restraint, not the kind that stems from fear, but the kind that arises from wisdom. A person who leaks emotion at every turn may appear expressive, but beneath the surface often lies instability. When your emotions are constantly on display, you become predictable, and predictability in the wrong hands can be dangerous. Allowing every emotion to dictate your reactions makes you manipulable. The Stoics taught that a wise person is not cold, they are composed. They feel deeply, but they do not allow everything to move them. That is the distinction between reacting and responding. One is unconscious, the other disciplined. It's not about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming deliberate, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to feel fully and when to pull back and observe. You don't need armor forged from indifference. You need a filter built from self-respect, one that asks, is this worth my energy? Does this draw me closer to the life I want, or pull me further away? Does this conversation deepen connection, or drain my clarity? When you start asking these questions, something shifts. You begin to preserve yourself, not defensively but in alignment. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Many of our emotional leaks arise from imagined responsibilities, beliefs that we owe everyone an explanation, that we must be understood by all, that our worth is tied to how agreeable we are. These beliefs are lies disguised as virtue. You do not owe your energy to everyone who demands it. You do not owe your time to everyone who asks for it. You do not owe your attention to every distraction that flashes across your screen, your day, your mind. What you owe, deeply and unapologetically, is stewardship of your inner world. That is your sacred space, and no one should rearrange it unless they've earned the right. With presence, respect, and reciprocity, people adjust to the emotional tone you set. If you are always available, always reacting, always explaining, they will expect that version of you forever. The moment you start conserving your energy, the moment you begin to say not now or simply remain silent, the balance shifts. They may resist at first, but eventually they recalibrate, or they leave, and if they leave because you stopped leaking, let them. That is not rejection, that is refinement. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But knowing yourself is useless if you do not also protect yourself. Emotional boundaries are not only about others, they are about living with your own depth without drowning in it. They mean feeling everything but being mastered by nothing. Walking through your day with a calm center that no one can access unless invited in. It is reclaiming the right to decide what deserves your emotional investment. You do not need aggression to be firm. You do not need volume to be powerful. Sometimes the strongest presence is the one that feels no need to react, the one that knows when to engage and when to let noise pass. That is not our weakness, that is authority. And authority is not granted by the world, it is claimed by the one who stops leaking. Your strength is not in how much you feel, it is in how you manage what you feel. If you allow every disappointment, every comment, every misunderstanding to occupy space inside you, you will eventually run out of room for peace. The human spirit is not limitless. It must be prioritized, pruned, protected. You cannot grow in a garden where every weed thrives. You must be intentional, not harsh, not closed, but conscious. The next time you feel the pull to explain what needs no defense, pause. The next time guilt arises for drawing a boundary, breathe. The next time someone projects their chaos onto you, return to your center. You are not obligated to hold what isn't yours. You are not a vessel for everyone else's storms. You are a steward of your energy, your clarity, by yourself. Let others call it distance if they must. Let them misinterpret your silence. Let them mistake your calm for indifference. You are not here to be decoded by everyone. You are here to be whole. And wholeness begins the moment you stop bleeding for what never deserved to touch you. Emotional leaks cost more than you realize. The moment you decide to stop them, you begin to restore something even more valuable: your presence, your power, your peace. Nothing is more worthy of protection. Many believe the lie that giving everything to others is virtue. We think, if I keep giving, if I keep showing up, I will be seen as good, as selfless. Yet closer inspection often reveals a different truth. What we call selflessness is sometimes an unconscious need to be needed. When you give without boundaries, you are not simply being compassionate, you are trying to prove your worth. And in doing so, you lose yourself. There is a difference between giving because you can and giving because you feel you must. The former comes from abundance, the latter from obligation. When your own needs are met, you have more to offer. That is where true giving comes from. The latter, giving from lack, is different. It is when you pour every last drop of yourself into others because you fear that if you stop, you won't matter. You are not offering love in that place, you are offering survival, hoping someone will fill the emptiness you created within yourself. But this is not kindness. It is a subtle form of emotional manipulation. You convince yourself that by giving endlessly, you will earn approval, recognition, validation. In reality, you are holding up a mirror to your own insecurity. And it is here that overgiving begins to twist. Consider how often you say yes to things you don't want to do. How often your body says no, but your mind agrees anyway. How many times have you gone out of your way to make someone else's life easier, only to feel drained and unseen afterward? This is the hidden cost of overgiving. It doesn't simply sap your energy. It erodes your clarity, your voice, your sense of self. You end up serving others at the expense of the most important relationship in your life, the one with yourself. Giving without boundaries is not virtue, it is survival, and it asks you to die a little more each time you comply. True service comes from overflow, not depletion. When you are full, you can give freely. You are not sacrificing yourself, you are choosing to share what you already have. But when you are constantly bleeding to make others comfortable, you are not helping them. You are letting them define you. You are saying, I am not enough as I am, but perhaps if I give enough, I will finally prove my worth. No amount of giving will ever make you feel whole if your generosity rests on insecurity. It is like trying to fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it will never stay full. You will always feel empty. Overgiving is a denial of your own needs, your own value, and ultimately your own humanity. You become so focused on filling the gaps in others' lives that you forget to tend to your own. You convince yourself that enduring exhaustion and taking on burdens is noble, yet the truth is you are denying yourself the right to be nourished, to rest, to heal, to reclaim your energy. In doing so, you erode the foundation of your strength. When you give until you are empty, you are not serving others, you are sacrificing yourself. And that is a dangerous game. Giving is not wrong. The world needs more kindness, more support, more people willing to show up. But real giving comes from strength, not depletion. When you give from abundance, you empower yourself and others. When you give from neediness, you feed cycles of self-doubt and insecurity. You may temporarily earn admiration, but you lose self-respect. You are not a martyr, you are a vessel, and a vessel must remain full to serve. If you are constantly draining yourself, there is nothing left to offer. How can you become who you truly are if you are always bending to please? How can you step into your power if you are endlessly giving it away? Overgiving is not generosity, it is refusing to acknowledge your own worth. It is pretending that your value is tied to what you do for others, rather than who you are. The truth is, you are enough as you are. You do not need to prove your worth through sacrifice. You do not need to disappear into someone else's life to matter. True strength is the ability to give freely without losing yourself in the process, a practice only you can cultivate. It is time to stop confusing self-sacrifice with virtue. It is time to stop pretending that more giving equals more value. Your value is inherent. The more you realize this, the less you will feel compelled to prove it to anyone. You do not need to bend over backward for others to see your worth. You simply need to stand tall, hold your own space, and choose when and how to give, based on your capacity, not obligation. Giving should come from strength, not emptiness. It should be a choice, not a compulsion. When you stop overgiving, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel more whole, more present, more attuned to your own needs. You begin to recognize your worth is not measured by how much you sacrifice. It is measured by how deeply you respect yourself. As you cultivate that respect, you will notice your relationships naturally grow stronger, not because you give more, but because you show up as your full, authentic self. Those who genuinely care about you will honor your presence, your energy, your boundaries. They will respect you when you respect yourself. Those who do not will gradually fall away, leaving space for connections that actually nourish you. Overgiving is often a hidden form of pride. It declares, I will sacrifice myself to prove that I matter. True service, genuine love, and authentic strength come from a place of abundance, not depletion. They come from knowing that your worth is not in what you give, but in who you are. When you stand in that truth, you realize the world does not need your sacrifice. It needs your strength. That strength is grounded in honoring yourself first, not from selfishness, but from an unwavering knowledge that you are enough as you are. When you remember this, you suddenly have more than enough to give. We often hear that the world reflects what is inside us. Yet the reality is more precise. The world responds to how we treat ourselves. Every interaction, every exchange, every relationship mirrors your own self-worth. If you treat yourself as a secondary priority, others will follow suit. If you consistently delay your own dreams to accommodate others, they will not suddenly encourage you to pursue them. Instead, they take it as a signal that your dreams are less important than theirs. This is where the problems begin. When you diminish your own needs and desires for everyone else, you teach the world that your boundaries are negotiable. You signal that your self-value is weak, and as a result, others will not honor you either. At its core, the world does not value what you do not value. This can be hard to accept. We like to believe that people will see our worth even if we don't recognize it ourselves, that they will respect our potential even when we fail to defend it. Life does not work this way. We do not get what we deserve, we get what we tolerate. Every time you settle for less than you want or deserve, you reinforce that tolerance. You teach people that your time, energy, and spirit are negotiable. It is easy to blame others for treating us poorly, but the deeper question is, how have we trained them to respond? Take a moment to reflect. When was the last time you said yes when you meant no? When did you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own well-being? That is not kindness. That is self-neglect. And the world notices. People may not intend to disrespect you. They simply observe that you do not respect yourself enough to set clear boundaries. When those lines are absent, when standards are not established, others will fill the vacuum. They will take what they can without hesitation. You cannot blame them. They are responding to the message you have sent. Your needs are secondary, your dreams can wait. And they have learned that lesson well. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you will do." That truth cuts to the heart of self-respect. It is easy to speak words of self-worth, but the real measure of your value lies in action. It is in the boundaries you set, the time you protect, the priorities you uphold. Just as the universe responds to what you do, so too do the people around you. If you act like your time is disposable, people will treat it as such. If you treat your dreams as negotiable, Others will assume they are unimportant. The harsh reality is that the way the world treats you is often a mirror of the standards you have allowed. This is not to suggest that everyone is deliberately malicious. Most often, it is not a conscious attempt to exploit you. It is simply that when you fail to set the standard for how you wish to be treated, others will occupy that space, and not everyone will honor you as they should. You cannot rely on others to respect your worth because of potential or quiet accomplishments. The world does not read intentions, it reads actions. The way you present yourself, the manner in which you uphold your own needs and values, communicates louder than any words ever could. This is why self-respect is crucial. It extends beyond caring for your body or maintaining healthy routines. It encompasses every aspect of your life. It is standing firm in your decisions, defending your time, protecting your energy. When you demonstrate that you will not tolerate neglect or mistreatment, you teach the world that your presence is significant. You create an invisible standard, a signal that you are worthy of respect, and in doing so, you reshape how others engage with you. You give the world a blueprint for how it should treat you, and that blueprint is laid out in the choices you make every single day. Do you honor your boundaries, or do you defer your needs for someone else's convenience? Do you respect your own desires, or are they always postponed in the service of others? You might wonder where to begin this shift, how to move from self-neglect to a place where your needs take priority, where the world reflects your value back at you. The answer is simple yet profound. It starts with small, consistent actions. Each time you say no when you mean it, each time you draw a line when your boundaries are tested, each time you refuse to tolerate disrespect, no matter how subtle, you reinforce your self-worth. It is in these quiet, unseen moments when no one is watching that the real transformation occurs. The more you show up for yourself, the more the world begins to mirror that respect. People cannot honor what you do not honor. They cannot value what you do not value, and they cannot give you the energy you have withheld from yourself. We've all heard the saying, "You can't pour from an empty cup." It sounds cliché, but it is undeniably true. When you fail to prioritize yourself, when you fail to fill your own cup, it becomes impossible to give from a place of abundance. You give out of obligation, not from capacity. And when that happens, you are not giving love. You are giving exhaustion, resentment, and a piece of yourself, all at the expense of your own well-being. You train the world to see your energy as limitless, but in truth, it is finite. Once that well runs dry, it cannot be replenished by waiting for external validation. Your worth is not determined by the world. It is determined by you. You are the one who decides how you are treated, how your presence is regarded, and how you show up for yourself. The way you treat yourself lays the foundation for everything else in your life. If you treat yourself as essential, the world will follow. If you treat yourself as optional, the world will reflect that same perception back to you. As you begin honoring your own needs, you will notice something remarkable happen. You become aligned, grounded, and your presence radiates a magnetic energy that draws the right people toward you. People who respect your boundaries, recognize your worth, and encourage you to pursue your dreams will naturally gravitate toward you. This shift does not just change how others interact with you, it transforms how you engage with yourself. You stop seeking validation externally and begin to create the life you want, rooted in the solid foundation of self-respect and authentic value. Remember, the world mirrors how you treat yourself. To change the reflection, start by changing your relationship with yourself. Stop settling. Start respecting yourself. Watch the world respond to the energy you give it. You teach others how to treat you, not with words, but through consistent actions. You set the tone, draw the lines, and clearly communicate your worth. Boundaries often carry a negative reputation. People imagine walls, tall, cold, impenetrable structures designed to shut others out. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors, openings you control. You open them when the timing is right and close them when it is not. Boundaries are not about exclusion, they are about inclusion on your terms. They determine who deserves your time, your attention, your energy. You cannot give everything to everyone, nor should you. In a world that constantly demands more, it can feel like you must be available to all at all times. But if you are always saying yes to others, when do you honor your own needs? Boundaries are not barriers. They are protective lines that safeguard your most sacred parts, your peace, your energy, your creativity. These are delicate elements that take time to cultivate and, if neglected, require significant effort to restore. Without boundaries, your door is left wide open. Anyone can take what they want, leaving you depleted. And when you are drained, you have nothing left to give, neither to yourself nor to anyone else. There is a misconception that boundaries are rude or selfish, that withholding yourself is failing to love. That is not love, it is surrender, surrendering your time, your values, your mental space, your self-respect. Real love requires protection first. Just like a cup overflows only from what it holds, your ability to offer love, kindness, or support comes from the reservoir of your own well-being. That wellspring must be defended. Without boundaries, you slowly drain yourself until you are empty, no matter how much you want to give. Boundaries safeguard more than your physical space. They preserve your emotional space. Your thoughts, feelings, and needs deserve protection. When others overstep your emotional boundaries, they impose their needs onto you, dictating your state of mind, your happiness, your peace. That is not freedom. That is control. Setting boundaries means protecting your emotional sovereignty. It is not shutting yourself off, but being selective about who and what is allowed to enter. Not everyone deserves access to your most vulnerable self. Boundaries are your declaration. I respect myself enough to choose who shares my energy. They are not rigid defenses. They are not rejection. They are intentional, conscious markers for healthy, meaningful relationships. They communicate that your time and energy are valuable, and they teach others to honor that value. When you set boundaries, you get to decide how and when to share your energy. You're not just protecting yourself, you're respecting the other person. You teach them how to treat you. You are saying, I am worthy of respect and I choose where my energy goes. This is empowering. It shows others that you value yourself and that they should too. When you constantly give without boundaries, you teach people that you're always available, that your energy is limitless, that your time doesn't matter. But when you set clear boundaries, you show them that your time and energy are precious, and that you will not give them away without careful consideration. How can you become who you truly are if you are always giving pieces of yourself to others? How can you stand in your truth if you are constantly bending to accommodate the needs of everyone else? Boundaries are the key to self-discovery because they create the space necessary to reflect, grow, and become. Without them, you are endlessly reshaping yourself to fit other people's expectations, a recipe for a life that isn't yours. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love and self-respect. It is deciding that you deserve to be treated with care, including protecting your time, energy, and mental health. Without boundaries, you let the world dictate the rhythm of your life. People ask for your attention, your help, your time, and you give without thinking. But when you say no, when you protect your space, you take back control. You put yourself first, not out of selfishness, but because without your well-being intact, you have nothing to give. That is the strength of boundaries. They give you the power to show up as your best self, not as someone worn out from meeting everyone else's needs. The truth is, the more you allow others to infringe on your boundaries, the more you lose yourself. You become resentful, drained, overwhelmed, and disconnected from who you truly are. When you set clear boundaries, you reconnect with yourself. You remember who you are, what you value, and where you stand. You operate from strength and clarity instead of guilt and depletion. Boundaries don't just protect you, they help you reclaim your life, Remember, boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They open when you choose and they close when you choose. They allow you to connect with others, on your terms, not theirs. In a world that constantly demands more, faster, better, louder, the ability to say no to protect your time, your peace, and your energy is an act of power. Boundaries are alignment with your true self. They ensure that your relationships reflect your values and priorities. When you protect yourself, the world respects you more, not less. Boundaries are liberations, not limitations. They are your birthright, lines drawn to safeguard your peace, protect your energy, and allow you to give in a healthy, sustainable way. You are allowed to decide who has access to your time, attention, and space. Don't let anyone guilt you for choosing yourself. Saying no is not rude. Boundaries reflect self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. By setting boundaries, you teach others how to treat you, and you teach yourself to protect what matters most. Letting everyone in isn't love, it's surrender. Love does not require sacrificing yourself at the altar of others' needs. True love is built on respect, respect for yourself and respect for others. When you set boundaries, you not only protect your own peace, you show others that they too deserve relationships that honor their boundaries. That is the key to building stronger, more meaningful connections. If someone were to watch how you spent every hour this week, what would they see? Would they witness time invested in what truly matters, or would they see it spent on distractions, obligations, and other people's demands? Time is the clearest mirror of your values. How you spend your minutes and hours tells the world exactly where your focus lies, whether on growth, relationships, or your purpose, or scattered across 1,000 things that leave you feeling empty. If you don't guard your time like it's sacred, don't expect your life to feel meaningful. When you don't take ownership of your time, it slips away piece by piece. Before you know it, years have passed, and you've been running on autopilot, living by the expectations of others, with little room for what truly serves you. Every minute you give away thoughtlessly is a brick removed from the structure of your purpose. Time is the foundation of everything you build. If you are not intentional with it, your passions, dreams, and relationships will crumble. You may tell yourself you're too busy to focus on what matters, but the truth is you're too distracted. Endless tasks, emails, meetings, obligations, they demand attention, but how many truly add value? How many leave you drained, uninspired, unfulfilled? You cannot create a meaningful life while giving your time to what doesn't align with your values. Every moment spent on things that don't serve your purpose is a moment you'll never get back. You must carve out your purpose every day. You choose where to place your focus and energy. Responsibilities matter, but they must be balanced with your deeper goals. When you spend your time intentionally, giving your energy to what truly matters, you begin to build something meaningful. When you choose where your attention goes, you construct the life you want to live, not the one others expect. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Self-awareness is the foundation of this process. You cannot align your life with your values if you don't look inward and ask what truly matters. Without reflection, without prioritizing daily actions to match your values, you remain at the mercy of distractions. The world is full of them. Society, work, even relationships. If you are not intentional, you give pieces of yourself to things that never nurture you. And the goals you devote your time to, who are the people you respond to first? What occupies your thoughts the most? How much of your time is spent on things that truly matter versus things that are simply filling space? This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. Every minute spent on something that doesn't serve your purpose is a minute you cannot get back. Time isn't just something we spend, it's something we invest. When you invest in your growth, your passions, and the things that bring you fulfillment, you create a life that reflects your deepest values. When you spend it mindlessly, life slips through your fingers. We all know time is fleeting, yet it's so easy to treat it like we have an unlimited supply. We say, "I'll get to that later," or "I don't have time right now." But the truth is, we all have time. We just choose where to spend it, and those choices matter more than we realize. Every time you put something off, you're making a choice. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your values, you're making a choice. These choices, though small in the moment, compound over time. They create patterns. They define your life. You are the sum of how you spend your time. You are not just the sum of your work, your relationships, or your dreams. You are also the sum of how you choose to use the time you are given. It's not that we don't have time, it's that we don't use it wisely. We get distracted by short-term gratification, by things that seem urgent but aren't important. And in doing so, we waste our most precious resource, time. You might tell yourself you'll make up for it later, but later is a promise you may never get back. Every time you give away your time thoughtlessly, you are saying no to the life you truly want. You're choosing comfort, distraction, and convenience over intentionality and growth. The good news? You can change this at any moment. It starts with awareness, being conscious of where your time goes and making intentional choices. Start by setting clear priorities, things that truly matter to you, things aligned with your deeper purpose. Guard those priorities fiercely. Say no when you need to. Choose your commitments wisely. Align your daily actions with the life you want to create. Every minute you invest in your purpose is a step closer to the life you truly desire. Time isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. Treat it with respect, and life becomes more meaningful, aligned, and fulfilling. If you want a life that truly reflects your values, start with your time. How you spend it reveals everything about who you are and what you care about. Every decision you make, no matter how small, compounds into the reality you live in. Time doesn't lie. It tells the truth about your priorities, your focus, and your values. Take a moment to reflect. Where is your time going? More importantly, where do you want it to go? Choose to invest in yourself. Choose your purpose. Choose your growth. Watch your life shift to reflect those decisions. In a world built on distraction, clarity is rebellion. We live in a time where attention is constantly hijacked. The ping of a notification, the buzz of an email, the endless stream of information flooding our minds. It's easy to get caught up in the noise, to drift from one moment to the next, never truly present. Here's the truth: you cannot build anything of real value if your attention is fractured. Every time you're pulled in different directions, you lose a part of yourself. Without focus, nothing substantial gets built. You may think you're getting things done, but in reality, you're just bouncing from one task to another, never truly completing anything or getting closer to your deeper goals. Focus isn't just a productivity hack, it's the path to becoming who you truly are. When you're focused, when your energy is directed in a single direction, you have the power to create, to build a career, nurture relationships, or develop yourself. Concentration is the foundation of growth. It turns potential into action, dreams into reality. When attention is fragmented, you're not just losing time, you're losing the opportunity to make something meaningful of your life. Each minute given to the unimportant is a minute stolen from your greater purpose. Becoming who you truly are requires focus. It requires the ability to direct your energy inward, to not let the external world dictate your actions. You must choose what matters, and, just as importantly, choose what doesn't. In a world demanding constant engagement, resisting distraction is a profound act of self-respect. It's rebellion against the noise, against the constant barrage of information dictating what you should care about. True power lies in saying no to what doesn't serve you, and yes, with intention, to what does. When your energy is scattered, so is your identity. You've seen it before, the person juggling too many things, always running, always reacting, never fully present, busy but not progressing, overwhelmed but not growing. Amid all this, they lose sight of who they really are. Their focus is too divided, their attention is too fragmented, their sense of self becomes just as fractured. When you allow yourself to be constantly distracted, you lose touch with your priorities, your purpose, and ultimately yourself. You don't just lose time, you lose clarity. And when clarity fades, your purpose fades with it. The most successful people in any field understand this principle. They know that focus is the key to mastery. Whether it's an athlete training for the Olympics bar or an entrepreneur building a business, the ability to concentrate on the task at hand separates those who succeed from those who struggle. Success doesn't come from working harder or longer. It comes from working smarter, prioritizing what matters, and eliminating everything else. Every minute you spend on something that doesn't align with your purpose is a minute wasted. And when you waste enough minutes, you waste your life. Focus is a discipline. It's a muscle that must be trained. It's not something you can turn on and off at will. It requires effort, intention, and practice. In the beginning, it's uncomfortable. Your mind is used to wandering, jumping from one thought to the next. It takes time to train it to stay on task, to resist distractions. But with practice, it becomes easier. The more you focus, the stronger your ability to concentrate becomes. And as your focus strengthens, so does your sense of self. You become more in tune with who you are and what you want. You start making decisions based on your values, not the whims of the world around you. This doesn't mean shutting out the world completely or isolating yourself. It means choosing what deserves your attention. Not everything deserves a piece of your energy. Not every person, task, or thought. You have the right to protect your focus, to guard it like a treasure, because it's your most valuable resource. Once it's gone, everything else falls apart. You can have all the ambition in the world, but without focus, you'll never get anywhere. You can have the best intentions, but if your energy is scattered, those intentions remain just that, ideas, dreams, plans without action. In a world full of distractions, protecting your focus is a radical act. It's a statement that you respect your time, your energy, and your purpose. It's a commitment to yourself that nothing will stand in the way of your growth. Every moment you stay present is a moment you choose yourself. Every moment you focus on what matters is a moment you create your future. Your time is precious. Once it's gone, you can never get it back. That's why it's so important to spend it wisely. Focus isn't just about getting more done. It's about getting the right things done. It's about aligning your actions with what truly matters. The world will try to pull you in a million directions, but remember, you decide where your energy goes. You decide where your attention goes. You decide what deserves your time. And that decision, more than any other, will determine the course of your life. In this modern age, we've been taught that multitasking is the key to success, that the more we do, the more productive we are. But the reality is, multitasking is a myth. It's a lie that keeps us distracted and ineffective. When you try to do too many things at once, you do none of them well. Your brain wasn't designed to split attention in multiple directions. You can't give your full energy to something if your mind is pulled in 1,000 different places. Focus isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right thing and doing it well. It's about saying no to what doesn't serve you and yes to what truly matters. Your focus is a reflection of your values. What you choose to concentrate on reveals what you care about. If you constantly give your attention to things that drain you, it's a sign your values aren't aligned with your actions. But if you focus on what brings growth, fuels your purpose, and moves you forward, you'll start to see your life take shape. You'll find the clarity you've been seeking, and in that clarity, you'll find yourself. Treat every moment of focus as sacred. Protect it, honor it, and above all, use your focus to create the life you truly want to live. In a world built on distraction, clarity is the ultimate form of resistance. It's the path to your highest self. Every time you choose to focus, you choose growth, purpose, and alignment. You choose to live a life true to you, not to the endless demands of the world around you. Keep your focus sharp and everything else begins to fall into place. You don't need to respond to everything. It's tempting, I know. Someone says something that stings, or there's a situation that feels unjust, and your first instinct is to jump in, defend yourself, fix things. But here's the truth, most of the time you don't need to engage. Not every insult requires a comeback. Not every problem needs solving. Not every invitation is a summons. Yet, we often treat life as a series of emergencies that demand our attention, energy, and emotional response. The truth is, you get to decide what deserves your care. You get to decide what takes up space in your mind, your heart, and your life. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about choosing where you place your energy. It's not indifference. It's wisdom. It's the realization that not everything in life requires your immediate involvement. Think about it. How often have you gotten emotionally entangled in something that, looking back, didn't truly matter? Maybe it was a trivial argument, an unimportant drama, or a criticism that wasn't worth the weight of your attention. We all get caught up in it at times, but when you reflect, you realize those moments don't define you. They drain you. And if you keep reacting to every insignificant event, you'll quickly find yourself living a life dictated by everything but your own values. In Stoicism, there is a core principle: be in control of your inner state. True peace doesn't come from the world around you. It comes from within, from mastering yourself. And that mastery starts with detachment, the ability to choose when to engage and when to let go. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That is the key to inner power. When you stop allowing every external event to move you, you begin to control the only thing you truly can, yourself. Self-mastery isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't care. It's about understanding that not everything requires your emotional energy. Some battles are not yours to fight. Some opinions are not yours to defend. We live in a world where everyone is talking, sharing opinions, demanding answers, but you don't have to be part of it. Detachment is the realization that not every thought, not every person, not every situation deserves your attention. The more you detach, the more power you gain, power over your time, power over your reactions, power over how you move through life. When you stop reacting to everything, you start reigning over your own life. Think about how much energy you've spent reacting to things that weren't worth it. Social media comments, family drama, work gossip, petty disagreements. How often have these drained your energy, leaving you wondering why you let yourself be affected? When you react impulsively or emotionally, you give away your power. You let the situation control you instead of maintaining control over yourself. But when you choose detachment, you reclaim your energy. You align with your true self and your true purpose. In this fast-paced, always connected world, detachment is a radical act. It's the art of saying no to distractions, no to drama, no to what doesn't contribute to your well-being. When you practice detachment, you create space, space to breathe, space to think, space to reflect. And in that space you find clarity. The more you detach from the noise around you, the more clearly you hear your own voice, your own thoughts, your own desires. You start living in alignment with your values instead of being swept away by external demands. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to prioritize what truly matters. It's understanding that your emotional well-being is a precious resource, not to be spent on what doesn't align with your values. The more you detach from what drains you, the more energy you have for what truly matters: personal growth, meaningful relationships, pursuing passions. Detachment gives focus. Detachment gives presence. Detachment gives power. The power of detachment lies in choosing what moves you. When you don't react to every external influence, you regain control over your thoughts and actions. You no longer let the world dictate how you feel, how you behave, or how you spend your time. You become the master of your own state. You choose what deserves your attention, your emotional energy, and what can be let go. When you stop reacting to everything, you create room for what matters. You stop wasting energy on the trivial and start investing it in what aligns with your purpose. Detachment allows you to stand firm in your values, maintain your peace, your clarity, and your energy, no matter what's happening around you. Detachment also gives freedom to step back and see the bigger picture. When you're constantly reacting, it's easy to lose perspective. But when you detach, you allow yourself space to reflect, to see things as they are, not as your emotions would make them appear. This perspective lets you act from clarity, not impulse. You start leading instead of reacting. When you detach from what isn't in alignment with who you are and where you're going, you reclaim the most precious power of all, power over your life. You choose your attention, you choose your energy, you choose what matters. And in that choice, you find intention, focus, and true strength. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to narrate your growth or justify your choices. In fact, the more you try, the more diluted your impact becomes. The oak tree doesn't ask for applause as it rises. It simply grows, strong and unshakable on its own terms. It simply grows, steady and strong, without needing validation from anyone. The silence around it only deepens its presence, and that is where the power lies. Silence is not about withholding. It is about allowing your actions to speak louder than words ever could. In today's world, where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence becomes a rare commodity. People are addicted to noise, the constant flow of information, the endless chatter, the need to be constantly visible and validated. But in a world so loud, restraint becomes precious. It stands out. It commands attention, not by force but by its rarity. People are drawn to what they cannot easily get, and silence in a noisy world is as magnetic as it is powerful. The more you hold back, the more your presence fills the room. It is like the air before a storm, still, quiet, yet pregnant with power. Silence is not weakness. It is control. It is mastery over your own energy. When you speak less, you conserve your power. You do not waste your words, your thoughts, or your attention on things that do not matter, and in doing so, you build an aura around you. People begin to notice, not out of confusion but out of curiosity. They start to sense the depth that words cannot capture. Your actions, the way you carry yourself, the way you engage with the world, these become the language people listen to. When you allow your actions to speak for you, you create a different kind of respect, one not earned through constant explanation or loud declarations, but through consistency, through showing up, through doing the work and letting the results speak for themselves. It is easy to talk about what you want to do. It is easy to fill the air with plans, promises, and explanations. But real impact is in what you actually do. The more you demonstrate your values through action, the less you feel the need to explain them. Carl Jung once said, "The quieter you become, the more you can hear." This is true not just physically but psychologically. The more you embrace silence, the more you hear your own inner voice. You cannot hear your true thoughts when you are constantly filling the air with noise. The mind needs space to breathe, to process, to reflect. When you create that space, when you allow silence to envelop your life, you begin to hear clearly. You understand your own desires, your own motivations, and, most importantly, your own worth. Restraint in speech does not mean withdrawing from life. It means choosing your words, your responses, and your actions with intention. It means understanding that not everything needs to be explained, not every question answered, and not every situation discussed at length. Sometimes your presence is enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold your ground, stay silent, and let the world watch as you work, grow, and move forward. Your silence becomes a statement, one that says, "I do not need to convince you of my worth, I show you through my actions." In a world that thrives on instant gratification and constant validation, restraint becomes an act of defiance. Those who are constantly speaking, defending themselves, seeking approval, often have the least to say. They seek attention but never find the depth that comes from quietude. When you remain silent, you detach from the need for validation. You no longer rely on the applause of others to fuel your sense of purpose. Instead, you turn inward and draw strength from within. Your sense of self becomes anchored not in what others think of you, but in who you truly are. Silence builds gravity. It makes you seem larger, more substantial, even without speaking a word. People are drawn to those confident enough to be still in a world that is always moving, always talking, always seeking. This is not a power that is flaunted or demanded, it is simply felt. It is the power of presence, of being fully anchored in who you are and allowing that presence to speak for you. The more you speak, the more you risk diluting your message. Words, when overused, lose their weight. But when you speak less, when you reserve your energy, your words carry meaning. Each sentence is deliberate, each action a reflection of your values. When you stop reacting impulsively to every stimulus, you create the space to respond with intention. Real power lies not in filling the air with noise, but in remaining unmoved, staying centered, letting your actions do the talking. People respect you more when they see you do not need to explain yourself constantly. You do not need to convince them of your value or justify your decisions. You simply live in alignment with your truth, and that truth shines through. Silence gives others space to observe, to appreciate, and to understand you for who you truly are, not for who you try to be. When you are caught in the rush to prove something, you lose the depth that quiet presence provides. So the next time you are tempted to over-explain or fill silence with unnecessary chatter, remember, silence is not the absence of communication. It is the space where true power is created. It is in stillness where your intentions become clear, where your actions speak louder than words, and where your presence alone is enough. In a world addicted to noise, your silence is the most profound thing you can offer. Speak less, do more. Let your presence say what words no longer need. Let silence build the gravity that draws people toward you, not because you demand attention, but because your presence is undeniable. You are not here to be consumed until you are empty. You are not an endless resource for others to draw from until every ounce of your energy is depleted. Too many live as though their value is measured by how much they give, how much they sacrifice, how much they pour out for others. At first it may feel noble, helping others, being there for those around you, but eventually, giving without replenishing yourself drains you. An empty vessel cannot pour into others. The problem with this mentality is that it ties your worth to what you can do for others. But your worth is not in what you give, it is in who you are. You are not a utility or a service existing only to meet the needs of others. You are a foundation. A foundation is strong, stable, and built to endure. It does not give away pieces of itself until it is hollow. It provides support, it anchors, it remains steady when the storm comes. To be someone others can truly rely on, you must first be your own foundation. When you prioritize your growth, your vision, your restoration, you do more than become stronger. You become a source of strength for others. You do not need to burn yourself out to help people. You do not need to lose yourself in the process. By standing firm in your vision and taking care of yourself first, you become someone who can be counted on. Not because you sacrifice everything, but because you remain whole. Carl Jung said, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." This applies to your sense of self as well. The barriers you build through self-neglect, people-pleasing, or sacrificing your well-being prevent you from becoming the strong foundation you were meant to be. The more you allow others to take from you without replenishing yourself, the more walls you build around your growth. You start to shrink, to feel like you're disappearing. But when you focus on building yourself up, prioritizing your well-being, you remove those walls. You let your inner strength flourish, and from that place you can give freely, sustainably. Being a foundation is not about rigidity or unyieldingness. It is about steadiness, reliability, and flexibility. It is knowing where to draw the line and where to open up. It is knowing you can help others, but only when you have helped yourself first. The moment you treat yourself as a foundation, you stop living for others' expectations and start living for your purpose. You make decisions that align with your vision, not just the needs of those around you. That is when you become someone people can truly rely on, not because you've given everything, but because you have held your ground and remained steadfast. The world will always ask for more. People will demand your time, energy, attention, but your resources are precious, finite. You are not a tool to be used until you break. You are a person with purpose, vision, and capacity to grow. The more you focus on nourishing yourself, the more others will respect you, not because you've given everything, but because you remain true to yourself. They will see your foundation is solid and trust will follow. Strength does not come from constant sacrifice. It comes from balance, from understanding that you are a whole person, not a half-finished project meant to serve the whims of others. When you give, give from abundance, not emptiness. When you set boundaries and protect your energy, you teach others to do the same. Self-respect is the foundation of everything. When you stand firm in your worth and make your needs a priority, you show others that their needs are equally valuable. You create a cycle of mutual respect, where no one is drained and everyone has space to grow. It is easy to feel selfish for prioritizing yourself, but giving without replenishment serves no one. You teach others that their needs matter more than yours, and in doing so, you teach them to take from you endlessly. When you focus on restoration and growth, you become the kind of person who can offer real support. You inspire others to do the same. Stop living as if you are here to be consumed. Stop believing your value lies in what you give. You are a foundation, not a utility. A cracked foundation supports no one. When you nurture yourself and honor your needs, you become a source of strength for yourself and for others. You do not need to sacrifice yourself to be of value. You do not need to lose yourself to help others. When you stand strong and prioritize yourself, you build something lasting, something that can support others without ever breaking. That is true strength. That is the foundation you were meant to be. Your life becomes purposeful, aligned, and fulfilling. There will always be people who dislike your boundaries, your silence, your detachment. That discomfort is not your problem, it is theirs. The more you prioritize your peace and live in alignment with your values, the more others may feel threatened. You stop seeking approval. You stop molding yourself to fit someone else's expectations. To them, you become a mirror, reflecting areas in their lives where they feel incomplete or chaotic. They may project their discomfort onto you, expecting you to shrink. But you do not owe them that. You do not owe an apology for choosing peace. You do not owe a justification for your boundaries. You do not owe an explanation for your detachment when it is necessary for your well-being. Your peace is yours alone. If it bothers others, that is not your responsibility to fix. When you are clear about who you are, what you want, and what you stand for, some will be uncomfortable, especially those who have not yet cultivated clarity themselves. Do not let their discomfort make you question your path. Their inability to handle your peace is not a reflection of your actions, but of their struggle to confront their own inner turmoil. True strength is stillness. Real peace is a discipline. When you hold space for calm amidst a storm of demands, you realize just how unsettling that can be for those around you. But that is their journey, not yours. If your calm upsets them, it is because they have not yet learned to find their own. Your peace does not need to apologize. It does not need to shrink to accommodate someone else's discomfort. And yet, how often have we dimmed our light to avoid rocking the boat? How often have we quieted our truth, our needs and our desires, only to keep peace outwardly while finding ourselves at war within? When you stop seeking approval from others, you begin to notice just how much of your energy has been tied up in trying to appease people who may never be satisfied. You start to understand that your energy is sacred, and you do not have to give it away to those who are only looking to drain it. It is crucial to recognize that when you stop people-pleasing and begin prioritizing your own peace and self-respect, some people will inevitably feel upset or challenged. This is not a signal that you are doing something wrong. Rather, it is a sign that you are doing something right. Those still attached to external validation, those dependent on constant approval, will often find your self-assurance threatening. They may try to pull you back into your old patterns of compliance, into bending yourself to meet their desires. But the truth is, you cannot be the source of healing or support for someone else if you are continuously sacrificing your own well-being. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Constantly catering to another person's chaos drains your peace and undermines your own stability. When you stop bending to the whims of others, when you stop asking for permission to be at peace, you begin to emerge as a force of nature in your own right. This is precisely when resistance arises. The people unaccustomed to seeing someone stand firmly in their self-respect are often the first to push back. Yet their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your calm is not a crime, and your self-respect is not an offense. Someone reacting negatively to your boundaries does not obligate you to shrink them or to explain yourself. It is natural for people to push against anything that challenges them, anything that calls them to evolve, but that does not mean you must yield. This does not mean you stop empathizing or supporting those in genuine need. It does mean, however, that you recognize your energy is sacred. You do not need to give it away in ways that leave you drained. You do not need to apologize for creating space in your life, a space where you can simply exist, without bearing the weight of others' expectations. True love, true service, and authentic relationships arise from inner peace, from boundaries that are honored, from interactions where you are allowed to exist as you are, without the need to justify, explain, or shrink yourself to make others comfortable. When you begin to embrace your own peace, you start to discern the difference between giving out of genuine love and giving out of a need for validation. Operating from a place of need creates transactional connections. Acting from alignment with your values transforms your relationships into authentic bonds. The more you protect and cultivate your peace, the more it becomes evident that peace is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is the foundation that keeps you grounded, clear, and aligned with who you truly are. If your peace makes someone uncomfortable, let them be upset. You do not have to shrink yourself to make them feel better. You are not doing anything wrong. You are merely standing firm in self-respect, choosing to build the life you deserve. Your peace is not a crime, it is the cornerstone of everything you are and everything you will become. The more you practice prioritizing it, the more the world adjusts. Those who resonate with your energy remain, those who do not naturally drift away. That is exactly as it should be. Let your peace serve as the boundary that defines your life, the space where you can thrive. Saying no unapologetically is among the most powerful tools you possess, yet it is often the hardest to wield. We have all been there. Someone asks for our time, help, or energy, and instinctively we say yes to avoid conflict, discomfort, or disappointment. Yet each time you say yes when your heart says no, you abandon yourself just a little more. You shrink your own needs and desires to make someone else comfortable. In the process, you lose touch with your truth, your boundaries, and ultimately your sense of self. But imagine if saying no could be the key to reclaiming your power. Imagine if every time you said no, clearly, calmly, and unapologetically, you were teaching the world that your soul is not up for negotiation. You are not here to be endlessly available while your well-being and purpose are pushed aside. You do not need to justify yourself. You do not need to apologize for choosing yourself. A no is not a rejection of others, it is an affirmation of self. It declares that your time, energy, and peace are not commodities to be traded away. Once you begin saying no in this way, something shifts. You begin to step into a new kind of freedom, an inner freedom rooted in knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer tolerate. In a world where demands are constant, saying no becomes an act of strength. It is not rude, it is not selfish, it is a necessary boundary. Reflect on how much energy gets spent attempting to satisfy everyone else. How often do you say yes to things you do not want to do? simply to avoid tension or discomfort. Each time you give in this way, you do not just give away your time. You give away your power, the power to choose what aligns with your values, the power to honor your commitments, the power to protect your peace. Saying no is how you reclaim that power. When you protect your energy by saying no, you stop being at the mercy of everyone else's expectations. How can you build a life that reflects your true self if you continually give in to demands that do not align with your values? The truth is, the more you say yes when you mean no, the more you lose touch with your identity. But when you start saying no unapologetically, you reclaim authenticity. You create space for your genuine desires and needs. You begin to become who you truly are, unapologetically, authentically, powerfully. Saying no is not just about rejecting what drains you, it is about affirming what fuels you. Each no to what diminishes you is a yes to growth, to peace, to purpose. By doing so, you build a life aligned with your values, not dictated by the expectations of others. You stop living on autopilot, doing things out of obligation, and begin living intentionally, making conscious choices that serve your higher purpose. Every no is an act of self-respect, a statement that you are worthy of your own time, energy, and peace. Living from this place of self-respect transforms how the world responds. People respect your boundaries because you have shown respect for yourself. You become someone who cannot be taken for granted. You operate from clarity and power, not exhaustion and compliance. The more you practice saying no, the easier it becomes to protect your time, your energy, and your peace. You realize that no is not a rejection of others, it is an act of love for yourself. It is drawing the line between what you are willing to give and what you are not. It is prioritizing yourself without guilt or shame. When you say no, you teach others how to treat you. You show them that your time is precious, that your energy is sacred, that your peace is non-negotiable. You create the life you were meant to live, one rooted in authenticity, self-respect, and purpose. Your energy is valuable, and your well-being matters. When you stop apologizing for saying no, you begin to live with integrity. You stop compromising who you are for the sake of others' comfort. This does not mean you have to be rigid or closed off to the world. It simply means that you are discerning about where and how you invest your energy. You are not required to please everyone, and you do not need to be everything to everyone. You are allowed to prioritize yourself, and in doing so, you become more present, more authentic, and more powerful in your relationships with others. When you stop saying yes to things that deplete you, you become more available for what truly matters, the things that bring joy, the things that align with your values, and the things that fuel your purpose. Do not worry about how others might react to your no. It is natural for some people to feel disappointed or upset when you set boundaries, but that is their issue, not yours. When you set a boundary, you are not responsible for how others respond. You are responsible for protecting your own peace. Anyone who genuinely cares about you will respect those boundaries. They will understand that your no is not personal. It is a reflection of your commitment to yourself, your growth, and your well-being. Those who do not respect your boundaries may not have a place in your life for long, and that is okay. The people who matter will remain, and they will value you even more because of the strength it takes to say no. Saying no is one of the most empowering acts you can practice. It is a way of reclaiming control over your life and your energy. It is a declaration, I am worthy of my own peace. When you begin saying no with confidence, without explanation or apology, you step fully into your true power. The battle for your time, your energy, and your peace ends the moment you stop negotiating with everyone who wants a piece of you. In its place, you create a life filled with purpose, clarity, and authentic connection. You will come to realize that the more you protect your peace, the stronger you become, not just in your own life, but in the lives of those who respect you. Do not fear saying no. It is the beginning of inner freedom and the start of a life that truly belongs to you. Self-prioritization is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming cold, detached, or selfish, but the truth is quite the opposite. It is about becoming ready, ready to give, ready to love, ready to lead, not out of desperation, but from a place of strength. There is a misconception that focusing on yourself means isolating from others. That is not the case. Prioritizing yourself creates a foundation for everything else in your life. When you take care of your own well-being, when you build clarity and structure in your life, you set yourself up to be the best version of yourself for others. It is not about pushing people away. It is about being able to show up for them when it truly matters. Many fall into the trap of giving endlessly to others, often at the expense of themselves. They believe that being constantly available or giving all they have is virtuous. But what happens when you give without replenishing yourself? You burn out. You feel depleted. Eventually, you can no longer give anything of value because you have forgotten how to restore yourself. That is why self-prioritization is not selfish. It is preparation. It is the act of preparing yourself to be present, strong, and effective when the moment calls for it. When you focus on building inner strength, when you prioritize your health, your peace, and your vision, you become a better partner, friend, colleague, and leader. By putting yourself first, you create the space necessary for growth. It is not about seeking validation or trying to please everyone. It is about standing firmly in your own clarity and recognizing your worth. Only then can you give in a way that is healthy, sustainable, and authentic. You cannot pour from an empty cup. By focusing on yourself, you fill that cup so that you can offer something truly valuable to the world around you. This is not about creating distance or cutting people off. It is about understanding that your own well-being is the foundation for everything else in your life. When you stand firm in your own needs, when you protect your energy and your time, you create a space of stability, and that stability is what everything else in your life depends upon. If you are constantly unstable, constantly in turmoil, constantly giving everything away, nothing around you can stand firm. Your relationships will falter, your work will suffer, and your dreams will be compromised. But when you prioritize yourself, when you put your clarity and structure first, you lay the foundation for everything else to thrive. Self-prioritization is not about building walls or becoming inaccessible. It is about cultivating the strength to show up, to give when it is right, and to love from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You cannot lead, love, or create effectively from a state of depletion. But when you invest in your own growth, you are not only preparing yourself, you are preparing to give more powerfully, more meaningfully, and more effectively to those around you. By putting yourself first, you create space for others to thrive as well. It is not about diminishing their importance. It is about making yourself strong enough to support them when it truly matters. The reality is, when you do not prioritize yourself, you are not genuinely able to lead or love in the way you imagine. You end up following blindly, hoping that if you do enough for others, they will recognize your worth. That is not leadership, that is desperation. True leadership arises from confidence and self-respect. It comes from knowing that you have something valuable to offer, not because you have sacrificed yourself, but because you have built yourself up. The same is true of love. When you love out of desperation, when you give everything of yourself to another, you lose yourself in the process. But when you love from strength, when you are grounded in who you are and your own needs are met, you can love fully without sacrificing your essence. When you give love, give it in a way that is real, lasting, and that does not drain you. We are often taught that to be a good partner, a good friend, or a good leader, we must constantly give. But the truth is, giving without first caring for yourself does not make you noble. It makes you fragile. It is like building a house on a cracked foundation. Eventually, that foundation will crumble. But when you prioritize yourself, when you protect your peace, your energy, and your growth, you create something that endures. You build strength. You build resilience. You cultivate the ability to give from a place of stability, not from a place of exhaustion. This is not about ego, it is about equilibrium. It is about finding balance in your life, between your needs and the needs of others, between your aspirations and your responsibilities. Prioritizing yourself does not mean others do not matter. It means you matter too. It means you deserve the space to grow, to restore, and to thrive. When you give yourself that space, you become someone others can rely on, not because you have sacrificed yourself for them, but because you have built yourself into someone strong, clear, and centered. Self-prioritization is the foundation for everything else in your life. It is the anchor that keeps you grounded, the fuel that keeps you going, and the clarity that guides your decisions. When you make yourself a priority, you are not just preparing for challenges, you are preparing to lead, to love, and to build the life you have always wanted. In doing so, you create a life that is not only meaningful for you, but also meaningful for those around you. The next time you feel guilty for saying no, or the next time you question whether you should put yourself first, remember this: you are not here to be consumed until you are empty. You are here to build a foundation, one that is strong, steady, and capable of supporting everything you wish to create in your life. Prioritize yourself and watch everything around you begin to align. Your strength, your peace, and your growth are your responsibility. When you prioritize yourself, you lay the groundwork for everything else in your life to thrive. Do not allow anyone, including yourself, to convince you that you are not worth the effort. Stand firm in who you are, and everything else will follow. Thank you for being part of Stoicism Notebook. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to explore more by watching one of the suggested videos on the screen. Keep growing, keep reflecting, and remember, your clarity is your power.